Is that coming through?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much for inviting me for this thing. My name is Aditya. I work in the Department of Communication, Drama, and Film at the University of Exeter. Uh, it just aligned. I'm away on research leave, so Manas reached out saying, "Hey, can you do this?" And I thought, sure, why not? Um, as rightly introduced, a lot of my work lies in the field of video game studies. Um, I am one of those people who tries to look at video games, leisure, play, and tries to understand how it impacts broader society. What I have for you guys today, I'm trying to hit all three elements. I'm trying to hit research, pedagogy, and also to some extent thinking about broader social impact. I'm drawing from the work that we do at our Center for Digital Majority, for which I am an associate director at Exeter, and I'm bringing in shared knowledge from a module I teach called Economies of Engagement, uh, which is specifically focusing on what my brief for today is. Right. So moving on. Right. So the element I'm looking at is situating engagement in digital platforms, trying to understand it from the perspective of AI, thinking of AI not just as tools and methods and approaches, but what exactly is the mediated element that goes with it. So that's a big element for me to kind of think about. How does AI kind of shape our interpretations of reality, but also our own processes of content creation, production, consumption. Right. So to give you a little bit of an idea of what we are going to work with today, keeping in mind we have a particular amount of time, we'll try and wrap up by 6:30. So I have split the session into, I think, about 50 plus 20. So a 50-minute teaching kind of a thing, 20-minute for an activity, which I hope you guys will indulge me with, because there's only so much I can teach theoretically, and about 10 to 15 minutes of feedback, right? For questions that you might have, things that I can answer, I can in any way, right? So some of the concepts we're going to work with today, the first one I think most of you should already know, attention economy, what it kind of is, how do we kind of understand it with regards to the media realities we live in. The second one we are looking at is something called engagement economy. That is where the bulk of the new work that I do kind of lies. Then I look at the idea of platformization. This is a very Western construct, of course. There is bigger questions to think about it from a perspective like India. How do we think of it differently? But a big amount of drawing I look at here is from the work at University of Amsterdam. Then I look at platform cultures and how exactly platform cultures kind of function. A big element, again, something I draw from my work is on gamification. And I try and connect all of them with artificial intelligence as an enabler, how it kind of structures what we're trying to do. Right. I know at this point it might be seeming like I'm throwing a lot of words at you, and none of these make sense how they connect. Don't worry, that's my job. Over the next hour, I'll try and show you how they kind of connect. Right. So again, I will assume here, because it's a faculty development program, that most of you have an advanced understanding of media studies. So I will jump between ideas to show connections more than actually focus on bits of theory. But again, if there's something you don't understand, if there's something that's not coming across well, please ask, and I'll be very, very happy to answer. Okay, right. Uh, so again, three lenses with the work I'm kind of looking at with the concepts. The first is the content creation kind of lens. If you were to think of media studies, this would be the practice kind of it, right? So the shift in production strategies, how do we rely on models? So when I'm talking about models, I'm not talking about um, theory models, etc. I'm talking about, LLMs, other kinds of models and things like that, right? Moving on from there, I'm also thinking about the consumption and engagement bit. This is more what we would call the audience side of things, the producer kind of side of things, right? So how the economies of engagement kind of work, how they are structured. This is a big element to kind of think about. This is something Exeter is known for. I kind of lead the research on economies of engagement. So I'm hoping this is unique for you guys. The third bit to kind of look at is the research with regards to platform cultures, gamification, and the big element there, the sustained loyalty that we kind of talk about with regards to users and consumers. Right. If you think about it, all platforms seek loyalty, all platforms seek consistency. Um, how do you kind of arrive at those things? So these are big elements for us to think about, both as researchers of media studies, but also people who are digital citizens. So how do we understand that? Okay, so if I were to begin with some context, again, some of these things I'm hoping you guys already know. We live in late stage capitalism. The best way of trying to understand that would be to look at Adorno and Horkheimer and their critique through that iconic piece that is culture industry. Okay, so if we were to make things different from that kind of an understanding, it is from that late stage capitalism that we begin to think of the information economy, right? Where information is scarce and generation of information is key. So everything that we kind of signify with regards to, LPG, 1991, um, globalization, all of that is because of the information economy, because there is a flow of information across borders, time, space, right? So again, I'm sure you know all of this. Moving on from there, the question there is what happens when we have too much information and not enough, time, energy, resources to understand it and value it. We are in that kind of a time right now because of late stage capitalism and media being one of the key industries. All of us are generating more information than we can handle, and all of us cannot comprehend the amount of data being thrown at us, right? So the first layer of understanding this anomaly is what we call the attention economy, where there's so much information, but we have attention only for some bits. And depending on the bits that seek our most attention, they are the ones that are valued the highest. Okay? So, which is why, a manifestation of that would be to think of things like clickbait on the internet and so on, right? All of that's part of that. Okay. So, if I were to think about attention economy a little more in depth, right? We draw on it from a wide variety of disciplines, behavioral economics, of course, cognitive psychology, and media and communication studies. Okay? It focuses on that shift, correct, of attention as the key commodity in our interaction with knowledge and information. There is no limit to the amount of information we have, and there is no limit to the amount of knowledge we can gather and understand. There is a limit, however, to the amount of attention we can give. There's only so much our minds can do. There's only so much time in a day. So time becomes the key element. Correct? Also, this is what we all talk about in our classrooms, I guess, with students about diminishing attention spans and how they only have so much attention. But you must understand, we as faculty members, staff, researchers are competing with, Instagram reels and TikTok shorts and all of those things. And how do you kind of make sense of that, right? So the big element to keep in mind is obtaining attention is a kind of wealth, correct? A form of wealth that puts you in a preferred position to get anything this new economy offers. So I'm looking at Goldhaber's definition of this in academics. Correct? So, which automatically means then the people who are in this economy are people who can provide you platforms where you can get attention. So advertising is a good element to look at it, but also everything on the digital media landscape, correct, is our platform suppliers for visibility, for attention. Okay, so this is the big question. How do you pay? Through live attention. How do you pay to get more attention? How do you kind of work? Which also means there's a shift in the media industry as we know it. Media platforms and organizations have moved. How they attract advertisers is a big question. How do we think about that? So we begin to see terms like cost per click, cost per thousand users. We talk about cost for generating visibility. I'm sure all of you who are talking about social media marketing, we talk about using influencers, micro influencers as possible ways of marketing. Again, all of that is in many ways visibility, attention, right? So all of this works if attention is focused mental engagement on a particular item of information. Items come into our awareness, we attend to a particular item, and then we decide whether to act. Now, how do we kind of make sure this is what gets our undivided attention? And that's the big question, right? So the bigger question is, what if our attention as a society doesn't work this way? What if we don't think about these things, right? And a lot of that happens because of a shift in how we access information. We search for information and research it to engage with suitable materials. A big part of what we wanted, we used to search for information. Google search, you go type in results, you find things. All of that was search. We moved away from that though. Correct. We moved away from looking and searching, actively seeking information to trying to have information delivered to us. So information was being made available and accessible to us for the time when we needed it to access it. So think about it. For example, if you want to find out the scores for your favorite sports team or your favorite cricket team or whatever, earlier you had to go into Google, type score results, and then go to a particular dedicated website and so on. And then this changes direct to a notification system where then information constantly keeps coming to you, the stream of data. So that's a big thing to think about, right? So um, then we move from there where information is being given to us before we need it. A large amount of it's got to do with algorithms, the curation of things, what we call predictive analytics. But this also means that our information gets restricted. As you can see in the image there, it gets restricted in walled gardens. Systems kind of predict what information you need. They try and give you the best information that you need before you need it. But the problem is the major assumption is this is the only information. And that's a major concern for us, especially when we think of media industries. We think of how media needs to be democratic, needs to be open access, all of that. Right? So once this research goes out of the window, our walled gardens are seldom broken. Right? We are contained, constricted. Information is being given to us before we need it. We are not seeking information we probably might want because we are simply not aware of it. And that's the big question. Right? So this is where the cornerstone of what we are doing today kind of comes in, the engagement economy, right? So attention is no longer enough. There's only so much that we can have. So everything that is happening consistently in the digital lives we lead is the fact that we don't have enough attention. Correct? This part of it's got to do with the lives that we lead, where we are constantly being bombarded with information, but also because of the platforms and online services we are part of. Correct. So even on the business side of things, platforms are no longer selling audiences to advertisers because that's not enough. They're not making enough money. So what used to be Robert Pickard's iconic media economics dual product kind of a thing, that doesn't work anymore. Instead, what we do is we look for interoperability. Platforms enable the convergence of content, audiences, and user data into what they call an integrated commodity form. So they will sell all of this together. So they're selling your data, your patterns, your usage styles, all of that. And that's a big part of their business today. So this leads to what we call the commercialization of online. So for anybody who wants to study platforms, who wants to analyze social media systems, it's very, very important to understand this way, that we are no longer just individual users. We are no longer, held by just one platform. There's a cumulative data or our digital footprint that is actually gathered and then sold. And that's the bigger question, right? So what does it kind of lead to? Some of the things that we are beginning to see in our research is about how platforms are aggregators and marketplaces. They're not just places where you find content. There's a shift in the logic of web traffic as well. People don't go to browsers so much anymore. A lot of how we access internet is through native apps, which means that digital footprints are gathered differently. There is some interesting new research from Oxford that talks about linked data that Naomi Fuller kind of looks at. This might be something you might want to think. Right? Again, it leads us to building communities and partnerships, not just for us as users, but also platforms, systems. Correct? So when somebody like Meta agrees to form a partnership with somebody like Google, they are taking all search history from Google in exchange for giving all digital media travel history in exchange. So these are things we want to think about. The key element, though, is most of the mechanics across all these platforms are focused on what we call sustained. If we have realized the shortage, the key resource is time, what can we do to have you there for the longest time possible? This is an invert logic if you think about it. So if any of you remember how the internet first worked with Google kind of monopolizing search, Google's business was how do we take people away from Google as quickly as possible? Because they made money for how quickly people went to the right search result. This is the reverse of that. No, they don't want anybody to go away from the platform or the space there. How do you hold people? And that's a big question. So in order to do that, you got to build loyalties. So how do you build loyalties? And those are the bigger questions. Okay. So what I've been telling you so far is where the industry is kind of heading. Okay. So let's now think of it critically from how we kind of understand it. As researchers ourselves, as experts of media, how do we kind of construct? Correct. If you think about platforms, and because a big part of what I'm talking about today is platforms, it's important to understand that the internet is probably at its most controlled state today. So some of you might remember this, at least from early new media research and stuff, about how the internet was decentralized and independent. Correct? We are in the exact opposite moment of that. The internet has never been more centralized. Correct? So if you think about it, global digital platforms are becoming increasingly central to public and private life. Everything that we do is generally with regards to a platform. Okay? This means that it's transforming key economic factors and spheres of life. At least from what we are seeing from our data in the research we are conducting on platforms, uh, it's very likely that maybe 2 decades from now, we are all either working for a platform or are the platform. There's nothing in between. Right? There is a complete control of how we understand reality. And these are things for us to think about. Right? So research on platform economics, especially the business behind platforms, has increased in the 2010s, especially in science and humanities disciplines, even social science, because of the prevalence of these platforms, how popular they've become. So if you think about financial and sector power, the big companies, right? Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet, probably control more portions of the internet than any other platforms before. And I'm not just talking about websites and applications, but I'm also talking about the infrastructure behind it. I'm talking about undersea cables. I'm talking about power. I'm talking about bandwidth and so on. Correct. So this is a big element for us to think about. Similarly, for platform companies as well. In many ways, they have formed powerful oligopolies among themselves, where these companies only speak to each other, and in many ways, kind of control the entire digital footprint that we think about. Right? So, markets that are highly concentrated and are dominated by a handful of businesses, if you think about it. Okay? So, if you look at any other country outside China, Google and Apple control the market for mobile apps. Google and Facebook dominate the market for digital advertising. And Amazon and Microsoft account for 50% of the market when it comes to cloud. So in many ways, no matter how much we think about AI or any of these things, all of them work on the infrastructure that is controlled by these platforms. So how do we think about these? From a controlled, structured kind of perspective, right? Now, of course, I've been speaking about the word platforms for a little too long, and I'm sure all of us speak about platforms every day. Correct. What's the distinction, though? How do we kind of define a platform? How do we understand it? The research I'm looking at here is the research by Nierburg and his lab at University of Amsterdam, who say that there's a distinction between how we understand platforms and portals. So they talk about how most of us think about Netflix as a platform. The often word that we use for Netflix is streaming platform, but it's actually not a platform. It is actually a portal. Because they say Netflix is a closed library-like professional walled garden rather than an open marketplace. What they're trying to say is Netflix is a system that actually commissions content, creates its own content, and licenses content it wants. It does not allow users of the platform to upload any content of their own. So in many ways, however you think about it, they are much more limited when it comes to distribution and user-generated content, as opposed to any other platform out there. Okay? So which is why all of them, Netflix, HBO Max, Geo Hotstar, they're not platforms per se, they're portals. They're windows from which you can access catalogs and library content, but they're not platforms. Right? So their perspective, what they say is, if you compare it with YouTube and think how Netflix makes money and how YouTube makes money, you kind of understand the distinction between a platform and a portal. Okay? So for YouTube, subscription is one of many ways that you come. For Netflix, subscription is probably the only way, and that's the distinction. Right? So keep that bit in mind. Okay. The key example, this is something for you to keep in mind. Platforms are aggregators, portals are not. What does that mean? We'll talk about in a couple of minutes. Okay. So what are platforms? Unlike portals such as Netflix that operate, on one side of the business, platform operate marketplaces. Their job is to open the space up for everybody and then create avenues of discussion between people. So platforms will allow people to make content. They will allow people to access that content. Then they'll allow advertisers to advertise with that content. They will pay the creators of that content. So suddenly you'll see there are like 15 to 20 different kinds of revenue streams that are opening up. And that is where platforms kind of lie. So they're aggregators of institutional connections, including economic transactions that mediate between end users and content service providers. And that is probably the big question for us. Because if you think about any digital platform out there today, any social media service, all of them are doing this. For them, this is more important probably than all of the network and connections that they all kind of championed when they first came. Okay? So digital platforms have benefited immensely from economies of scale as the cost to attract individual users has declined. And in economies of scope, as the cost to attract different user groups have also lowered. In many ways, they are becoming what we call perennial economies. Businesses that will never close, that will never stop, because all they want is your attention, and you're willing to give that attention because they have your data anyway. So the question then is, how do you escape a platform? But I think that's probably not for today. That's for a different thing to think about, right? So again, so what makes a platform tick? How does it work? The key element for any platform lies in the adoption. The adoption is the biggest element, and which is why engagement is the key metric. The more users that join a platform network, the more valuable the network becomes. The more valuable the network becomes, the more likely they are to attract advertisers, which then allows them to pay creators higher, which then allows creators to create more varieties of content, which means more creators then come in, which automatically then means that more users come in. So it's kind of like a circle of good economic logic or a vicious cycle, however you want to look at it. Correct? So the heart of any platform is what we call network effects. Correct? So for a platform to seem active and vibrant, the more people that come in, the more it kind of sustains. So if you were to think of a platform like Uber, I'm sure most of you know Uber's journey in India and how it kind of picks up and takes off, right? All of the Uber cab drivers, if you ever talk to them, will tell you about how in the early years, a lot of them were being paid insane amounts of money because that was where, uh, you know, they were that was what they were trying to do to attract drivers because the platform was only as successful as the number of cabs they had. And for that, they needed to attract drivers. Once the drivers were in, the users followed because you always found a cab as quickly as possible. Once the users followed, and people began to see how much money could be made from driving for Uber because of the high incentives, more drivers followed. So it kept becoming a cycle till we reached a point of saturation. And the platform's vibrant, valid, real. So everybody after that, since then, in that space, think about it. Ola, Rapido have been trying to do the same. They've been trying to disrupt the market by trying to build what we would call a fleet or a share. It's the same with social media platforms. How many creators can you get? How many users can you get? How many million people have downloaded it? These are the metrics that you're looking at. All of these are engagement metrics. That's the big element for us to think, right? So the question then for us to think is, how do we then examine these platforms? How do we try and understand these things, right? As researchers, we examine them for their economic models, political economy, if you guys want to do that. If you want to study them as service spaces of service activity, you could kind of look at their appeal and partnership models. What are they doing? Who are they partnering with? What kind of creators do they attract? What is their target audience like? All of these could be things you could look at. For their relevance and impact on society, that's where a lot of my work kind of comes in. For their ability to engage and shape existing culture. Think about it, right? Think about how our understanding of music has changed because of a platform like Spotify, or how we read books because of Goodreads. All of that is platform effects, right? Or a platform like Bookstagram, correct? A subculture within Instagram, and how it's shaped, lit festivals across the country. All of those things, right? So the big question is, how do platforms get us to engage with them? This is something, again, that's very important. This is something I study as well. And lastly, how they mediate reality for us. So if the most time we spend is on a platform, our reality is constructed from that platform. So the question is, how do they give it to us, and what's our understanding? Correct. So anyway, I'm going to stop here. That's one trajectory. I hope that made sense. I'm moving to the next trajectory, which is the gamification in broader society. It's important to connect this to the previous one. So I'm sure a lot of you know what gamification is. We always talk about it. It's a buzzword since 2010, and there's nothing here that I'm bringing that is probably, but I'm hoping you kind of understand how gamification feeds into the engagement economy. And I think there's value there for us. So if you think about gamification, Dieter Ding defines gamification as application of game-based ideas and mechanics to non-game contexts. So one of the biggest ways to make any platform seem viable is to gamify it, to make it seem like a non-serious space, a space where you're willing to take risks, where you're willing to have fun, and you don't really mind if something doesn't go the way you intend. Correct? So the question is, to what extent can we apply these mechanics? Right? How do we kind of understand? Correct? Because the mechanics are specifically built to spur engagement, to get people to engage more, to give more time, and in the process, offer more interaction. So how do you kind of think about it? So if you were to think of all of this as an economy where our engagements are the labor we perform, so these platforms are, through gamification, extracting interest. They remain constantly interested. They always need to be sites of virality, and they always need to be relevant and topical. And they do that through gamification, right? And that's the big element, correct? So they create associations by users and give them a purpose of how to gamify, correct? So they provide avenues of meaning suddenly that probably don't exist. The question is how. So I'll take a minute here for you guys to think about it. You must know of this application called Cred. Some of you must have used it. Some of you might not have. Correct? So yeah, correct. Thank you for that thumbs up. Right, Mahendra, that helps. Right? We all have used Cred at some point. Correct. Thank you, Jack. Tell me the point though. Of what use is Cred to any of us? Apart from that 1 rupee or 2 rupee cashback, or maybe a limited offer of 100 rupees. It's not really a life-changing platform. Correct? But the fact that we use it is because it tries to convince some sort of value add that we don't understand. Muskan in the chat says actually nothing. Probably, I would agree with you. But the element of the fact is for us to think about this. Right? The people who have been on Cred rarely ever leave Cred. They still make their payments through Cred. And so much so that Cred has even expanded to things like Cred Garage and all of those for travel information. Okay. Now, my question is that Cred is such a free app and they want to give you chances at cashback. How exactly are they making their money? Right? How are they surviving as a platform? They're making money through the engagements. Right? They look at our purchase patterns. They look at our movement patterns. They analyze our credit card statements, our bank transactions, our UPI. And all of this data they kind of compile together. They try to sell you credit cards. They try to sell you different things. You get my point, right? So in many ways, this is exactly what they're doing. They're gamifying the possibility of you ever to win a cashback so that you stay constantly with credit. Come next month when you have to pay your credit card payment. You can pay it through any other app, but you will use credit. And a lot of it's got to do with the experience and the gamification than anything else. Very likely we're never going to win anything. Very likely we're never going to buy anything from the store that they want to sell us things. But we'll keep using it. And they'll keep accruing data. Correct? And then that data is sold off the platforms. So that's the business. So that's the question. But the fact is gamification becomes the cover under which we don't ask. Now, as media researchers, how do we then examine these things? These platforms, which are what we call bullshit platforms, which have nothing to offer, but are in many ways extracting data from us. Correct? So gamification historically has been applied in a variety of spaces. Health and well-being, absolutely. Pedometers, Fitbits, fitness apps, so on and so forth. There is research on gamification, of course. Gamification is used in workspaces, if you think about it, how our contracts have fixed pay and variable pay, how we need to meet certain objectives to unlock new items on our salary and so on. Correct? Gig economy and labor, big element. Look, think about how Uber uses, or any delivery app uses star-based rating, and how, depending on star-based rating, it does what we call video game-like matchmaking. That's a big element for us to think about. So it's only if you have a consumer rating of above 4.6, will you get a driver who has a rating of 4.6, right? So that's how they're using matchmaking. And of course, the nature of hiring and job expectations. For the first time, at least I've seen with new contracts in positions like social media manager and stuff, where contracts are being gamified, where people need to deliver certain amount of visibility, certain amount of engagement, certain amount of community growth. Only then do they unlock bonuses and stuff. So while it seems gamified, the ramifications are very, very real. And that's a big element for us to think. So in health, if you think about it, gamification has been used with something called Exeter gaming, getting people to exercise through games. Pokemon Go was a great example. It was used originally to combat health issues around obesity and stuff, which is great. But since then, there have been problems, and we'll talk about it. But one of the key elements that gamification does without a question, it motivates people to keep using it. And that is the question. So it uses aspects like streaks. It encourages creations of habits, practices. Think about Duolingo. If any of you use Duolingo to learn a language, how it does the emotional blackmail through the day to get you to keep playing day after day after day. Again, economies of engagement, right? Yeah. So these are things that we want to think about. Again, all of this has led to this emerging field called games for health, which specifically looks at gamification in health, right? So these are things we want to kind of consider. Again, health is not limited to obesity. Some of my other earlier work has looked at how gamification can be used for Alzheimer's, dementia, to get people to take risks, to help with cognitive ability. At the heart, it is all dopamine. We all live for the dopamine. How do we kind of think about it? So engagement, interactions, all of them elicit dopamine. And platforms work on a cognitive neuro level for the dopamine. So these are things we want to think about. Again, why does it work? It motivates people constantly. It is broadly accessible through mobile technology. There are sensors for everything. You can keep track of everything. There's a great appeal for it. You can apply it for anything. You can gamify contracts, assignments, reading, like how Goodreads does it. You can gamify how we listen to music. You can gamify what hotel you stay at. If you think of any of those Marriott Bonvoy or any of those memberships that talk about all of those things. Cost benefit efficiency. Amazon does it with lightning sales, consumerism. These are big things to think about. Everyday life fitness, correct? Support and well-being. All of these are things that we gamify. And it works. But the fact of the matter is, if you think about any platform today, at the heart of it lies the gamification. So that's a big element. Correct? In the gig economy, what we have noticed is it becomes like a electronic whip to keep people in line. The employer is the platform. So how do we kind of understand these things? And if you look at how Uber kind of overhauled everything in 2018, correct, at the heart of everything that they were doing was gamification. The application linked individual rewards with Uber's need to maintain, a frictionless marketplace where people were constantly available to drive and constantly available to take cars. How do you kind of do that? Correct. So workers resist gamified algorithms by developing their own games, but it has never been successful. And this is a bigger question for us to think of as media researchers. In the illusion of games, are we exploiting people? And if yes, how? Right? So now the AI bit, I'm quickly making my way towards that because that's the question. Yes, platforms, yes, we understand what platforms are doing. Yes, we understand what gamification does to platforms, but how does AI kind of fit in? Right, so the AI bit, right? So we always assume that generative AI is this sudden new technology that we're thinking about, but it's always been there for the longest period of time. It first manifested, as we think about, in the form of algorithms. So as early 2000s, we've had AI around us. Then it manifested in the form of big data and how big data was kind of interpreted using, predictive algorithms and stuff like that. Then with machine learning, which led to what we call the building of large models, not necessary LLMs that everybody talks about. There are models for a lot of other things as well. And that's where all of it kind of starts. What makes it interesting for us as media researchers? A lot of what these models offer us is creatively focused. It helps us visualize data. It helps us animate data, uh, perform, deliver content. And I'm seeing this from my partners in the gaming industry who are telling me that, things that needed 5 or 6 people to shoot a video, a promotional video and stuff, can now be shot with one person working for about 4 or 5 hours at a time. So there is, in many ways, a significant automation of how content is created and stuff. So these are things we want to consider. Okay. In between all of this, we also have to make meaning of supposed perfections. All of us kind of put AI generated content at the moment on a kind of pedestal where we don't question it for the mistakes it kind of makes. And these are things that we want to kind of think about. So the big question with something in between all of this is, if all of us are composing emails via AI and replying to emails via AI, at what point do we actually just stop caring? It is just AI bots talking to AI bots, right? So we are beginning to reach those points where most emails are AI composed, all replies are AI composed, and nobody really is taking anything away from it. And that's a bigger question. Okay? So where do I come at from here? So I come from a field called game studies. Correct? We have worked with AI in many ways about how to make platforms immersive, fun, competitive. The AI is a big part of everything we do. Correct? In the generative AI avatar, our understanding of AI has kind of changed. Of course, there are the usual techno panics, fear of society's understanding of concepts like creativity, originality, ownership, work, style, expression. A lot of people talking about what happens to copyright, IP in the age of AI. Important questions, no doubt. But this is something that video games has always kind of handled. So in the case of video games, we have had generative AI from as early as 2010, 2012. We have seen how it's helped, how it's not helped, how it's destroyed an industry. And these are things that we always want to think about. So the key element here is from design to coding to narrative building or storytelling. It is supposed to transform everything. And that's what we thought it would be. But I guess the problems kind of also start there. Correct, because it did not. So if you think about any of these generative AI kind of systems, if you've used Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, Dolly, all of these are more creative ones that can create images. Like, for example, the image you see here of that lady composed between flowers and leaves is a generative AI rendered image. Correct. The question is, the more we saw about these things, the more we realized that with AI working specifically off models of data, there was a lack of consistency and there was also a lack of characteristic flair. There is no signature style per se. And that is something that we were beginning to worry about. It, when we were specifically working, so in Exeter, I have a lab where we work on game design, game world and stuff. So one of the things that we were specifically looking at is this idea of how narratives, dialogue, and characters are kind of built. And we were using generative AI models and systems specifically for game-based environments and stuff. And we found that there was a lot of homogeneousness in data. There was a lack of variety, and there were lots and lots of stereotypes. So that became one of the biggest problems, right? Because you cannot really change these things unless you have a conversation with the model. But you do not know if the model is willing to converse with you. So how important is it? Similarly, with code generation, especially those of you who do programming, coding, what we kind of realized is while coding was fast and instantaneous, there were lots of problems, lots of minor errors. There was a struggle in adapting to things. So one of the big questions for us as researchers is how to then question these same things that we are observing from the content we are getting that is delivered to us, that is AI rendered and created. How do we ask our students? How do we ask ourselves to know that this is not good enough content, to question and point out and flag things when AI is not doing a good job? Okay? So these are bigger things to kind of think. So some of the questions we had to ask, and the outcomes were telling us that we had to ask is, what were the large models doing? How were they being trained? What is the source material they're being trained on? So for example, if you look at ChatGPT, a big amount of its writing uses a lot of words like del or things like the hyphen, the elongated hyphen, because it is heavily trained on New York Times writing styles. It is trained on the database for New York Times writing. So in many ways, the language kind of draws from there. So these are questions we want to think about. So with any model that you're working, any kind of AI service or tool you're working, for us as researchers to ask, what is it trained on? Where is it getting its understanding from? What were they getting their information from? because this is again a big element, especially for people like us who come from a non-Western context. If we are taking responses from AI that is trained on Western data, how really useful is it? Because these are the same questions of hegemony that are coming back, right? So these are things we want to think about. If we are looking at tech-based legitimacy, this AI model system, because they want to be a representative of reality. ChatGPT or any of those generative AI models don't want to compete with something like Wikipedia, but they want to rather compete with something like Google. So in many ways, they change the way we gather information. So models like these can generate hegemonic narratives, and these are questions that we have to ask. And then for some of us who want to focus more on the critical side of things, the question is, where do we find voices to resist this kind of hegemonic representation? Where do they kind of come from? Just to tell you some of the research that has happened here. On the left, there is some research that me and my friend Debo wrote for Oxford early last year that was looking at how hegemonic data can kind of happen, how we can kind of question AI models to not give us standard stereotypical kind of responses, but rather widen understandings and how important that is. On the right, this is something my colleague Andrea does from the Center for Critical AI at Exeter that looks at how participatory action research can be used to critically question AI, and if possible, for us to look at how countries from the global south can engage with countries from the global north, or even south-south for that matter. Okay? So the big question is, all of this is fine. How do we interrogate these models? How do we kind of look at it? So one of the interesting things I found was in 2021, there's this journal called Big Data and Society. They had a call for a special issue on machine anthropology. They were asking us to examine lives of machines and systems, to focus on how machines function, what is it that they do. And I think that is where the answer kind of lies for a lot of these things. To question models, to question algorithms, to question prompts and systems of prompts, correct? Or even the anthropomorphizing that happens within a generative AI structure. The heart of it lies in our examining of the machine itself, no matter how visible or invisible it is. Correct? So research on digital and data infrastructures. So where are the data centers for this? Where is the training happening? What is happening there? Correct? How are they being operated? The demands of local structures of data, how willing they are to engage with languages that are not necessarily English. How willing are they to engage in knowledge that is not necessarily Western? Correct? How is data gathered for these models and systems? How is it curated? How do you determine what data is useful, what data is not? Correct? How is it cleaned? How is it interpreted? These are all questions we need to ask, because only once we ask these questions, we understand what's going into the model to then examine what exactly is the output. So these are very important elements for us to kind of focus on. How is the data first constructed? How it's curated? How is it selected? What exactly is the model being taught? Right? So these are things we have to think. Right? So how do we question the opacity of the query and result process in such interactions? So for example, if you're asking for data from this, how exactly transparent is it? Or how opaque does it matter? Because if you look at any of these models right now, they almost make knowledge and information come across as though it is divine intervention. It is coming to you from the heavens. You can't question this. That opacity is something we need to question. Can we look underneath the algorithms, correct the architecture that is making it happen, and the mechanics? Because it's on the basis of this that our experiences are kind of created. So that's where the platform connection happens. So if you think about platform cultures, why you are recommended specific content or why you are not recommended specific content, the rules of the platform, how do they determine what is worthy of the platform or what is not, what is moderated out, what is kept in, what is banned, what is not banned, the governing structures, the interface itself, and how people engage. All of these are things we have to interrupt, because increasingly generative AI models become the foundations for what we are kind of looking at. And these are elements that we want to think about. Right? So just to give you an idea of the machine anthropology bit I was talking about. So this was the call for that issue from Big Data and Society. So they were talking about how do we kind of conduct an ethnography of something that is not actually living, but is a thinking system. correct? And how do we think about that? So I'll leave it here for a couple of seconds so that you guys can take a look to understand what they were trying to do. So one of the big questions is to think beyond, as the slide says, think qualitative data and big quantitative data, but actually to think of data as a spectrum, correct, and how it settles between those things, and think about this, right? Okay, I'll move on from here. Okay, now the question is, if we are looking at the Gen AI of things and even AI-based models, how do we kind of examine? So on the right, you see this is the pedagogy bit. This is the AI, what do you say, um, um, the AI cover sheet that we give our students at Exeter to kind of get them to tell us what have they used generative AI for. Because we have realized in many ways, with media students especially, we cannot really tell them not to rely on generative AI or not use generative AI because it makes no sense. They're increasingly going to go to workplaces where this is part of their day one thing. So for us, it's important to get them to think about how conscious they are of what they're using and to know why they are using what. So one of the things we get them to do, as you can see on that cover sheet, and I'll zoom in on that a bit for you guys to see, is to get them to declare to us what exactly are they working on. What are they using generative AI for? What specific purpose? So in many ways, we have found that this allows them to think more critically about how they're using generative AI. And they also begin to understand the limitations of what generative AI is kind of giving. A lot of them often come back to us and tell us that what we are getting from generative AI models, be it Claude, be it Anthropic, be it any of the other ones, be it Gemini or ChatGPT, is that they get very, very vague, superficial responses. And after a couple of months, we found that students themselves found little value in it. And we found that quite interesting. So how do we kind of begin? So this is something for us to think about as researchers as well. So how do we think of the contribution of AI or generative AI to our research? Is it a proofreader of what we are writing? Is it an editor? Is it a research assistant? What exactly are we using it for? Do we use it to shape the literature we are reading? Are you asking it what literature to read, what not to read, in what order to read? Are we using it to summarize literature that we have read? Correct. Are we asking it to suggest ideas that we want to work with? Okay, are we using it to sort data, engage with it? Correct. Is AI creating visualizations for us? Is AI coding data for us? Because if you look at any of the new ones, right, Atlas T or even NVivo, all of them now have AI tools built in to code data. Are we using it for analysis? So sentiment analysis, tonal analysis, visualization, the bits I was telling you. Correct. Or are we using it to find inspiration, something that we want to write? Are we using it to summarize? Or are we using it for something else entirely? These are big elements for us to think about. Because I think this is where the questions kind of lie. If we can understand what our students are doing with AI, it shapes the way we teach, changes our approach to pedagogy. But if we understand ourselves what we are doing with AI in our research, it changes the way we do research. It also focuses us to think about differently. Okay, I'm going to take a couple of minutes to just tell you what I'm doing with my work on generative AI and how it kind of works. So I've broken some of the research I'm conducting into three strands. I'm happy to answer questions about this. At the heart of the first one is something that I call AI augmented, where I use AI to kind of improve the kind of work I do. The second is AI enabled, something that's only possible because AI works and AI sees patterns that I cannot. And the third is AI critical, where I kind of question what AI is trying to do. So the first one, the AI augmented, this is a larger project that I'm conducting. It's between India and the UK. It's a two-nation study that will continue over the next 3-4 years. We are studying data stream in video content. We are studying game streamers to be precise. And we are using AI to keep track of tags in the large volumes of data. So we are studying about, if you think about it, about 10 streamers in the UK, 10 streamers in India, each of them who stream every day for 5 days a week and for about 7 hours. And all of the data they are streaming is what we are analyzing. So we are using AI as a way of kind of sorting and arranging the data for us. it is grouping and ungrouping sections of data for us through tags. So we tag data and then we ask AI to kind of identify other similar groups of data that might mirror those tags. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, of course. We are using it to observe meta picture of thick data because all of these streams come together. We use a tag to kind of compile all videos together and see a meta picture and stuff. It allows us to, when we actually go to the coding bit, because a lot of this is exploratory research, we use Strauss and Corbin, the grounded theory kind of coding. So it allows us to develop codes, the open, axial, specific kind of coding. It helps us with regards to that. Could we have done this without AI? Absolutely. Is it making our life easier? A little bit, yes. Because we are going through large amounts of data and massive sections, and the tagging kind of helps. It also allows us to map data for large teams because this is happening between two countries. This is a large project between University of Exeter and four other institutes in India. So they share data among all of us, and it kind of shares the entire archive well with it. So it works brilliantly for us because it's impossible to keep track of hours and hours of daily data over 4 years. That's almost petabytes of data, if you know what I'm talking about. So it helps tag, sorts, and maintains things for us. So here I would say AI is like a data assistant. Right? The last bit, what I was telling you guys, the AI critical kind of a thing. This is some of the work I'm conducting with Professor Nimi Rangaswamy at IIIT Hyderabad, where we are looking at matchmaking algorithms in video games. We're looking specifically at toxicity in multiplayer games, online games, and how people make video games, online games spaces that are unsafe for young people. So we are trying to understand how society features into this. So we're looking at dimensions of class, religion, caste, gender, all of these manifesting as part of matchmaking algorithms. So what we have found is, in many ways, if we look at how technology is designed, how matchmaking algorithms are designed, they're always designed with this singular focus on player skill, on what we call speed, on latency. Because if games are platforms, a lot of my newer work argues that video games are platforms. They're all only focused about on getting people to play as much as they can to make people have games as quickly as possible. But the problem with that is, in many ways, you're constantly matching against the same, which converts video game spaces and online game spaces into toxic spaces. Now, there is a problem here because, as an engineering problem, the algorithm is perfect. But from a social problem, the algorithm is deeply flawed. So, the research with this particular one, I think we have had a couple of papers out from here. We should have a couple more over the next couple of years. The question is this, right? Where is room for all of us to factor in the social in systems like these? Can we critically question AI algorithms and systems? Can we question how we understand technology? And I think that element will remain. Correct. So I'm going to stop with here. Okay, and we're going to move on to an activity that I have planned for all of you guys. Before the activity, though, are there any questions that you have for me?
If you have any question, you can put it in the chat box, or you can raise your hand so that we'll take your question. Yeah.
Any questions? Happy to answer them now, because after the activity, you may not remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Padmini, she has a question, I guess.
Hello, sir.
Absolutely. Please tell me. Yeah.
Hello, sir. So my research also revolves around social media and consumption, but of audio radio plays. But the question, yes, sir.
No, I said that sounds really interesting.
Okay, sir. Sir, my question is regarding the Piero study that you're doing, which sounds really interesting, because in India also a lot of subaltern communities have their own art forms, right, which are slowly getting lost. Do you see is the model that you're developing for archiving these art forms. Do you see it being implemented as easily in India as well?
No,
If we
it's
can.
not. No, it's not going to be easy at all. So one of the extensions we have is, I don't know if you know Bengali culture quite well. I'm not
I
Bengali,
am
but
Bengali, sir. My research
perfect. Thank
is on
you.
Bengali audio plays, actually.
Actually, perfect. So you get what we are looking at balls and as an extension, correct? Right. So all of that, the minstrelsy aspect within Bengali folk culture. So
Yeah.
that's our first extension that we're kind of looking at. We're also looking at Persian minstrelsy forms in the Middle East. Correct. So I think in the UK, what we get at the first level is we get a huge amount of um, what do you say textual data that allows the database to kind of build. Correct. Whereas we believe the more we move to contexts like India or the Middle East or any other, a lot of the traditions are going to be more oral and oral.
Yeah.
Correct. So the database building will have to do a lot more, what do you say, negotiation with the AI. So I'm going to take a minute to give you a little bit more depth. What we kind of do is we break open the AI model itself. Correct. So we build our own model, we break it open, and we use the metadata of the artifact to kind of get the AI to understand what we're trying to do. Right. So this is not AI in the generative AI kind of sense, what ChatGPT and all do, because for them, all information is fed into the model. The model needs to know everything. Our model works differently. It's a narrow focused AI. It needs to know just enough about this art form. It needs to be the be all. You get my point, right? So that it's not corrupted by anything other. Right. So I have a feeling because when we begin the ball and the Persian kind of thing, we are anticipating maybe 5-6 years at least just to build the database. Right.
Yes.
I don't know how it'll happen because the first one we've just got the funding through with the PRO thing. So it'll take us about 4 years to see how it goes. And with academics, we have to write the research papers and outputs that go with that. That'll take its own time. But no, thank you for asking that question. And your work on radio play sounds interesting. It'll be lovely to see it on desk.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. No, my question was because doing my research while doing my research, the history of Bengali radio plays is deeply connected to the oral culture of that area, of that region. Hence, I was thinking if it could be also preserved in that way. Thank you so much.
No. It makes a lot of sense, right? Because see, all of these, what do you say, archives are being, at least the way we are designing it, we are designing them as modular that can then speak to other archives. So if we do the oral culture archive, and if there is already a public archive of, say, radio plays, the two can kind of intersect and the data will kind of cross flow. So there is possibility, yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Of course, yeah. Any more questions, please? Yeah, Muskan has a question in the chat. Yeah, would research on humans and their interaction with AI come under machine anthropology? Absolutely, I think that's the way, I guess, Muskan. What you're asking is the right question. I think from the humans, though, we would have to restrict it just to the responses and prompts that we tend to provide and what is the data that we're querying. The bigger focus would be on how the questions are kind of understood and constructed by the machine and the responses that are then derived out of that. Correct? So machine anthropology will focus less on what the humans do and will focus more on what the machines kind of comprehend and provide. So as long as we have that shift, I think it would fit in absolutely. Right? So how the model works, how does it understand a question, what does it deem worthy of being responsible for the answer, all of that would fit. Thank you for that. Any more questions?
You can raise your hand if you have any question, or you can type in the chat box.
Okay. Manas, would it be all right if we do the activity and come back? That way, if there are some questions after the activity.
Yeah, please.
That would be fine. Yeah. Okay. So let me quickly move to the activity. Again, let's try and do this individually, all of you. For the first bit, I want you to take about 10 minutes, correct, and look at a digital media platform that you use. Okay, this could be any platform that you're relying on. It could be Instagram, it could be WhatsApp, it could be YouTube, or something different that you're kind of looking at. I want you to look at how the content is delivered. Okay, so take some time out, look at the platform, look at different pieces of content that your homepage kind of has, or your For You page kind of has, or that first landing page. Try and understand how is content delivered to you. Okay, once you take a look at those bits of content, look at least 3 or 4 such pieces, then come back and try and answer this question. What does the platform do to keep you engaged? What are the mechanics and dynamics it is kind of relying on to keep you engaged? Okay, any questions, guys? Does the activity make sense? Okay, I'm taking Padmini's thumbs up to kind of go as an overall thumbs up for everybody, and Muskan's and Akriti's and all of them. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for the thumbs up. So why don't you take about 10 minutes and take a look at these first 2 questions, and let's come back and then do the next part of the activity. Okay, I'm around if you need anything. If there is anything in the activity you're not understanding or not able to figure out, I'm here. So please feel free to ask. Vimal is asking, okay. Divya and Vimal are asking similar parts of the question. So let me answer Divya's first. Could you give me an example for the question? How is content delivered to you? So if you go onto a platform, think of any social media platform like Instagram, WhatsApp. Correct. What kind of content is coming to you? How is it being delivered to you? So Amrita in the chat is saying algorithms. Some of it could be algorithms, but there is probably more to it than algorithms as well, right? So what is happening? How is that the data that is given to you selected to be the right data to be given to you? The next bit is correct. How is content delivered to you? Yes. Is there anything else? That's the big element. How do you keep it engaged? Correct. So algorithm. Vimal says algorithms assess our interest and provide content according to increase engagement. I would say that's only one part of it, but I think there's a deeper part to it than that, right? So if you get all the information you want, you won't really stay there for too long because there is then an information overexplosion, right? So there's a steady trickle bit of data that kind of comes, trickle of information that comes. So they're constantly keeping you ready for the next bit, for the next bit, for the next bit. So that's the bit I want you to think about. Correct? Yeah. Abhilasha says more like teasers, yes, but there's more to it than that again. Yes, but I like that teasers, but that's an interesting thing. Oh yeah. Aditi says, recently I found this trick where I like and dislike reels on Instagram. Interesting thing that those people who follow me are shown that particular reel, which end up sharing with you. Exactly. Part of it is echo chambers, right? So the more you think about the engagement economy, the more you realize that platforms actually need echo chambers. They need all of you and your circle to see the same content because then you're constantly resharing it among yourselves, right? And you're all happy in what I call those walled gardens, right? So that is what happens. So some of it is location data, some of it is interest data, follower data. So there's many angles to it. Yeah. So if you could think a little bit more critically, guys, you're giving me good, interesting responses, but take a little more. Yeah. Moo Mukherjee Das says filter bubbles. I like filter bubbles. You're getting there. Correct. Think of it this way, guys. Complicate it further. Okay. Think about the kind of content you're given, the kind of advertisements that go with that content. Correct. There is some things that you need, and there are things that they want you to aspire for. Correct. So it's a mix of content. Correct. Because if they give you exactly what you need, the model doesn't really work. The platform doesn't grow. They have to give you some joy of self-discovery as well. So think about that a little bit. Okay, Vishesh says, Instagram, my interest related post T20 World Cup notifications about post engagements through suggested trends. Vishesh sounds good. But my question is, Vishesh, has nobody tried selling you T20 World Cup related merchandise yet to go with that content? Have they not tried selling you the official Indian jersey or possibly venues to matches, tickets, things like that? Yep, thank you. So now think deeper there a little bit more. Products kept in cart will pop up. Absolutely, absolutely. Think about the limited time sales that go with that, right? You unlock a special discount by just keeping a product in a cart that nobody else has, right? That's absolutely right. We get advertisement for breaking procrastination. Yep. Netflix's whole idea of binge watching works on that. Okay, the fact that we can engage with creators whose content we consume and the chance that they may respond. Oh, I love that. So, Padmini, good observation there. I think there is the whole dimension of visibility economics, right? Correct. Association, attachment, all of that. Correct. Amrita says personalization. Again, Amrita, personalization is level one. We need to go a lot deeper than that. Correct. Moo Mukherjee says, will it be self-actualization? Parts of it, yes. But again, there has to be more to it than self-actualization. Because the moment you self-actualize, you don't need anything. If you don't need anything, the platform will cease to function. So you always have to need something. So I think that's something for you to think about. Akriti says targeted advertisements, clickbait, and gauging interest, profession and lifestyle to substantiate those advertisements and clickbait. Perfect. Absolutely. Love it. Okay. The one thing most of you guys are missing, I want you to think about a little more, but Akriti, perfect. Shiny says the last thing I browsed keeps coming on my social media feed. I think it actually tries to increase the amount of time I invest on the platform. Yep. The whole idea, right? Recency bias. The more you see things that you were talking about, the more likely you are to think this is a platform that gets me. This is my platform. If, so theme of videos watched earlier, active subscribe channels, emotionally charged, surprising, and distinct, politically aligned. Yep, very likely. So they absolutely know where you're politically aligned, and in many ways, they are constantly keeping you in a echo chamber with the right kind of people, okay? So that you keep having fun and you keep thinking the entire world thinks like. We're getting shout outs during live streams. Oh, yes, absolutely. Mahendra Rawat, you are talking about the right side. That's a key element, right? That's how YouTube, Twitch, all of them survive. Time spent on each post is being observed. Oh, yes. How many of you use Zomato? Where if you take too long to make an order, the platform actually starts negatively, what do you say, charging you for spending too much time. If you're taking too long to take an order, they will start recommending places that are more expensive with dishes that are more expensive. Correct. Similarly, if you take too long to confirm a cab or a travel booking, cookies will track you down and you will end up paying more. There is always surge pricing for cabs, etc. Okay? So they need you to spend the right amount of time. So time spent on each post is being observed. Absolutely. Short-term gratification, I like it. But I think it's not just gratification, Preeti. There is a little bit more to it than that. X, it uses my social media footprint to target my relevant posts. Yep. Elon Musk absolutely does that. Class, gender, location, educational background, language, yes. We often seek to optimize our information seeking behavior in platforms are selective in information dissemination, not providing complete details. would a user not shift to another platform for complete information? I like it, Jasper. But what we are beginning to see increasingly is people tend to not shift platforms because the platform is, the term we use is called enshittified, or a platform has become shit. People tend to use platforms because their network is there. So, for example, a whole bunch of people still use Facebook, even though Facebook is right now not the most popular platform. It's because their entire circles are there. So, whether we want it or not, people will tend to remain where their social networks are. Correct? And that's where the key element is. Correct? So, which is why then we stop questioning our platforms critically, because all the people that we need are on that platform. Okay, on LinkedIn, content related to my domain is delivered to me through posts from various accounts. And that is how I came to know about this FDP. And I think that's how it's engaged. Ooh, Anushka, that's lovely, critical meta. Manas, I think your strategy has been figured out here. So there you go. Muskan says, yes, okay, engaging us through personalized rewards, making us create content to highlight our personal traits and using it to target us. Yes, Akriti, you got it. What I actually think shows in my feed, oh yes, predictive analytics, to give you data before you want it, to give you data before you think. How do you think that will happen, Kavi? Even Duolingo changes its expression. Oh yes. There's a big amount of research that's now coming about that says that Duolingo is great at getting people to engage with the app, but does not really improve your language in any way. Okay, what am I thinking to purchase or looking for comes in my feed? Yep. Yes, there are offers that could expire if you don't click within the given time, scarcity, limited time deals. Amazon's the master there, but everybody is now doing it. Finding multiple echo chambers we are in. Yep. I think that's a critical research, Raju, that we kind of have to look at. Analyzing our activity depends on the algorithms engaging activity. Yep. So our activity is to understand the algorithm and then examine the algorithm, which is interesting because the algorithm knows that we are examining them. It becomes a cycle that we don't know how to break. The one element that none of you have come up with, and I'm a little surprised with, is that idea of surveillance. Correct. Zuboff and all of them talk about it, the surveillance capitalism. The reason they know what you know is because they are surveilling you. They're taking data from you without you knowing, from platforms and services that you probably are not aware of. Okay, they also listen to our conversations when the phone is around, or Alexa, Muskan says, yes, absolutely, but there is more to it than that. Okay, so it's not just when your phone is around. And that's the bit that we have to stay worried about. Okay, let's move to the second part of the activity, guys. Thank you so much for being so actively engaging with this presentation on engagement. I don't know how to crack a more poor joke, but there is that. So now the second part of this activity, as you are saying in the chat, it's eerie sometimes when even our thoughts by some cognition pattern are also shown as ads. Yes, absolutely. Which is what the image I have for you on the next one. Stop showing me ads for things I just talked about. Correct. So which brings us to the next question. How relevant is the content delivered? And from what we have seen so far, all of you have told me that this is very, very relevant. You never get anything that is irrelevant, which means how likely do you think it is for them to be 100% accurate unless they are surveilling, unless they have digital footprint based linked data on us? Correct? Unless my Amazon is talking to my Agio, which is talking to my Instagram, which is talking to my Myntra, this is not likely to happen. So there is data moving across. Correct? What I was talking about, linked data. Correct. Now, this brings us to the next bit, because this is a session on AI platforms and engagement. Think of AI as both visible and invisible. Correct. So on the platforms that you're looking at, can you spot AI-made content? And how are people engaging with it? Correct. I want you to take a couple of minutes to do that, guys. So we have the next 10 minutes, I would say next 7 minutes for this bit of the activity. I want you to think of AI both as visible and invisible. Correct. Can you trace what the algorithms are doing to keep you engaged? Correct. Think about how AI content is being given to you on platforms, AI made content, and how are people engaging? How many people do you think are aware that this is AI rendered and this is not? The digital media literacy side of it. Correct. And the big question is, can you trace what the algorithms are doing to keep you engaged? And is there anything that you are doing to actually improve the algorithm? Correct. I want you to try and spot common patterns between the two. Okay, this is the level 2 analysis, guys. So take some more time. You have about 6 or 7 minutes. I'm here if you need anything. Any questions that you want to answer? Yeah. Here, guys, if you need anything, if you have any questions for the activity. But in the meantime, if you can do this second level observation, please, I'll be very grateful.
If is there any question you can ask or you can type here.
Perfect.
Think,
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Manas. You're right. Yeah. So as Manas says, any questions, please feel free to ask or type. Megha says through memes and animations, absolutely. That's where the magic is coming. One of the first things the AI is systems are kind of doing are they're adapting memes because memes are based on templates and you have basic meme engines. So this is the easiest thing to train people on, right? So memes and animations is one of the first things that they're kind of using to kind of the right word is intrude our data feeds and our social media experiences. Okay, Anuj says they're narrowing down the funnel by hit and trial method. Once we don't engage with a particular post, they start reducing such posts on our timeline. Yes, absolutely. Trial and error is a big part of it. But Anuj, I also think, a lot of us actually take the time out to tell Google and other platforms that this is not relevant. Correct. And that actually improves them. They come back to us with better things. So, yeah. So these are things I think we should be very careful about because I don't think we should take that extra time and effort out to tell people and platforms, this is not useful. I don't need this. I'm done with this. Correct. So, yeah. So things to think about. But yeah, just correct. So Padmini says it depends on the kind of AI content that I see on the feed and the kind of platform. Comments under AI generated content on Reddit are mostly this is AI. Instagram comments are mostly oh so cute, etc. AI content consumption and truly depends on digital literacy, as you mentioned. Thank you for that, Padmini. You're very kind. I also think what's interesting is the comments under most AI content are also from bots. So it is AI spawning, AI spawning, AI spawning. And suddenly they're actually gaming the system because the bot will accrue so many likes and other comments that this will go right at the top of your feed. And whether you want it or not, you don't know what to do. Correct. So the visibility game is being kind of monopolized. Correct. Pradeep says AI delivers most relevant content by learning from my behavior. It works both visibly recommendations, invisibly ranking, and personalization. Algorithms keep me engaged through repeated patterns based on my interactions, creating a feedback loop focused on attention and personalization. I like it, Pradeep. You're right. I would also add to that a little bit of the curiosity, exploration kind of a bit. Once they know what you're doing, they'll measure you against other people who are doing similar things. And beginning on what they like, they'll start predicting that to you. So it's part of the echo chamber, right? The echo chamber is not just to keep us happy, but it's also to make money on it. So, for example, if Manas is reading critical media on Gramsci, and if Manas has liked something on Amazon, why not ask Aditya? Maybe he might also like it, right? So that becomes an expert for them to kind of think about. YouTube also does survey, absolutely. Always skip the survey, please. Don't give it time. Um, um, Preeti says social media detox. FB recognizes content as AI as well. Most seniors also recognize content from AI from the original content. Yes, but the fact is, the only way to figure out that this is AI takes a little bit of time. By then, you have already engaged. They have made their money, which will mean that they'll come back and make more of that. So that's the problem. Social media is also using an emotional touch appeal to circulate videos and photos. The marketing gimmick is working. Sometimes it is difficult to distinguish between what is real and what is not. Yep, Mitushi, you're on the bat there. Increasingly, what's interesting is there were the latest episode of season of Bridgerton on Netflix, and the last season of Witcher on Netflix as well. Both of them actually had montages, proper cinematic montages that were AI rendered, and most people could not make the difference between what's AI and what's real. So that blurring boundary is becoming increasingly difficult. And I don't know how long we can, call one real and one AI, and that'll be tricky for us to think about. I observe AI is being recognized much faster than fake news was flagged. Something has shifted. Preeti says, "Yep. Some of us are developing those abilities. We can see things faster, identify things faster, and say this is AI. But a lot of times, I think a lot of this content is also not made for people like us who are critically aware of it. It's made for people who are not. It's like misinformation, disinformation, right? A lot of times we may not fall for it because we are aware, we will check. But a lot of people who are not aware of how digital media kind of functions fall prey to it thinking it is actual. So don't be surprised if there's an uncle or auntie in a family WhatsApp group that sends a video that is AI generated, but actually tells you that this is real. This is sadly where the attention economy kind of works. So it tries to inform specific publics, to form specific publics, Mahendra. Absolutely. What I also found interesting was some research we did during the 2024 election, where AI was used to make billions of voice calls to voters, correct, and to create personalized voice messages to people where people actually thought they were speaking to political leaders. And that was quite interesting to see. I think that is just level one. There will be a lot more that will happen there. And for us to be critically aware is so much more important now than ever before. Okay. So, yeah, I think we can stop with the activity now. We're down to the last 4 minutes. If there are any questions you have for me, if there's anything you would like to ask, not just related to the activity, but the overall session or the research I do, I'm happy to answer. Please let me know.